Okay, so when you hear the name Elon Musk, what comes to mind? Probably Teslas, right? Or maybe SpaceX rockets. But what if all that is just the beginning? What if it's all part of a much bigger, almost philosophical plan for humanity? That's what we're digging into today. And it all starts with a simple, but profound, idea he has about questions.
And boom, there it is. This is kind of the key to his whole worldview. For Musk, it's not just about finding answers to the problems right in front of us. No, it's about leveling up our entire species' consciousness so we can finally start asking the really big questions. About the universe, life itself, even about what's real and what's not.
So, where do you even start with a vision that big? Well, the first piece of the puzzle is actually something we all know pretty well. You might even be using it right now. I'm talking about the platform he calls X, and his plan for it is, well, very specific. So, why did he even buy Twitter in the first place? According to him, he felt it had just drifted way too far from the middle ground. His whole goal was to bring it back to the center, to create what he calls a global town square. The idea is a place for free speech, sure, but one that still follows the laws of whatever country you're in. Basically, no one putting their thumb on the scale, ideologically speaking.
But let's be real, a town square is just a place for people to gather, even a global one. It makes you wonder, right? What's the real point? Why go to all this trouble to bring the entire planet into one digital space? It's got to be about more than just posting memes.
And this is where things get a little more out there. We're moving from the nuts and bolts of a social media site to something much bigger. The true ambition, not just for X, but for a lot of his projects, is to help build what he calls a collective consciousness. So, what does that even mean, collective consciousness? Well, for Musk, it's not just about getting everyone online and chatting. It's about taking our combined human intelligence and upgrading it. The goal is to make information flow so freely and efficiently that we, as a species, can solve bigger problems, achieve more, and maybe, just maybe, start to understand the universe a little better. It's a huge idea, right? An optimized global brain could solve almost anything. But you have to wonder what that means for individual thinking down the line. He has a really cool way of explaining this. Think about it. A single cell on its own, it can't do much. But you get 30 or 40 trillion of them working together, and you get a human being. It's the same logic, just scaled up. One person can't build a spaceship. It's impossible. But get a whole bunch of people sharing their knowledge, working together, we can literally reach for the stars. For him, this is just the next logical step in how consciousness scales up.
Okay, so we have this idea of a collective human consciousness. But now you have to throw in the single biggest game changer in, well, possibly all of human history. Everything is about to get supercharged. Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches when he talks about this. He calls it a supersonic tsunami. He's not seeing AI as just the next iPhone or the next internet. To him, it's a force of nature that's going to hit us fast and change absolutely everything. And one of the first things to go, our whole concept of what it means to work. And check out this prediction. This is a big one. He thinks that in less than 20 years, maybe even just 10 or 15, AI and robots will be so productive that having a job will basically be optional. It'll be more like a hobby, something you do because you enjoy it, not because you need to pay the bills. And what does that lead to? A future where we have an abundance of pretty much everything. Okay, let's follow that thought. If AI and robots can make anything and provide any service we want, what happens to the entire system we've built around the idea that things are scarce? What happens to money? Musk has this really interesting take. He says money isn't really real. It's just an information system we use to divvy up human work. Think about it. If you were stranded on a desert island with $1 trillion, it would be completely useless, right? Because there's no one's labor to buy. So in a future where AI does all the labor, what's the real currency? He argues it's energy. That's the one thing you actually need, based on physics, to get stuff done. So when you put it all together, it's pretty simple. If AI gives us total abundance and can satisfy all our needs, then the tool we invented to manage scarcity, money, just doesn't have a point anymore. It would basically become an artifact from an older, less advanced time. All right, so we've gone from a social media app all the way to a future without money. This whole journey leads us to the biggest, most mind-bending question of all. If technology is eventually going to be able to create worlds this advanced, how can we be so sure we're not already living in one? And he just puts the question right out there. What are the odds we're in base reality?
The original, one and only universe, and not one of who knows how many simulations running on some supercomputer somewhere. And his argument for why we're probably in a simulation is actually pretty straightforward. Just look at video games. Seriously, 50 years ago, the coolest thing was Pong. It was literally two white rectangles and a dot. Today, we have games that are almost photorealistic happening in real time. Now just project that trend into the future. It seems pretty much inevitable that eventually we're going to create games or simulations that you absolutely cannot tell apart from reality. And if we know that's going to happen someday, who's to say it hasn't already happened and we're in it? And that brings us to his final kind of wild idea. It's almost like survival of the fittest, but for simulations. The most boring simulations would probably get turned off, right? But the really interesting ones, those would keep running. So if you've ever had one of those days where you feel like you're living in a movie, maybe you're not wrong. Maybe it's because the most interesting realities are the only ones that get to exist in the first place.